Hi, I'm going to do something a little different this evening, and this is a discussion of what I believe to be cinematic underachievers of 2011. And these are in no specific order, and some of these films are from directors that by consensus are highly regarded filmmakers. And basically, this is not a worst list because some of the films here are better than to be like kissed off as bad, but just to say what happens when, say, people have not enough time or money, or too much time and money, or massive tampering in post-production, or a film becomes either like over pretentious or is underthought. So without further ado, uh, there's 10 of these. So first on the list is the David Fincher 1% Milk version of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. And I guess I would say that yes, it does have a great silver and black kind of opening credits sequence, which is meant to be the shout out to the Maurice Binder Bond credits of old, with the Karen O. Trent Reznor cover of Immigrant Song. And then after that, you get to the actual film, and you could tell that probably there were a lot of Amy Pascal approved development notes telling Fincher and Rooney Mara to not scare the traditional males sexist away, so that Rooney Mara, plays Lisbeth Salander more as spooky waif than the more assertive and totally fearless Lisbeth Salander that Naomi Rapace plays in the Swedish films. So, gosh, and it's like for a lot of it, it seemed like Fincher was sort of like modeling his direction on Ron Howard doing the two Dan Brown Da Vinci codes for Sony, so you get a lot of like very conventional setups and stuff, and Fincher doesn't really wake up until it's sort of the torture and vengeance sequences, so to speak. And I'll just say to close that this is the first of 3 films on this list featuring Daniel Craig, who's having a sort of a rough time at being a major movie star outside of the Bond series, which is too bad because he's a genuinely fine actor. Okay, and we're going to number 2 now. Meek's Cutoff. And yes, there's some dynamic performances, Michelle Williams especially, but if you're going to see a Kelly Reichardt minimalist film starring Michelle Williams, then go back and rent Wendy and Lucy from a couple of years ago instead of watching this existential western that Ms. Reichardt shot in the 1.33 ratio ratio, which is the kind of the old TV block ratio, and shot things in ultra close-up, and it's well-intentioned, but just sort of you sit pretty in Pretension City for a lot of it. And moving on to number 3, Super, which is the filmmaker James Gunn, who had apprenticed with Troma and did the monster picture Slither a few years back, and this one's meant to be more something to say about people as superheroes and behaving psychotically, and when psychotic vigilante behavior gets rewarded by the public. And you could tell that it was made fast and cheap, and that worked against it, but kudos to Rainn Wilson and Ellen Page, and let's pass over that now and get to Cowboys and Aliens, which is a film that for a lot of the critical community is sort of like essentially a punchline, because well, to be favorable to Jon Favreau, it's an improvement on Iron Man 2, which I assume was Favreau and Robert Downey Jr.'s sort of homage to Smokey and the Bandit 2. And just as a sidebar, it does seem like now that Downey Jr.'s going for the gusto of big paydays, that he's kind of like starting to become the Burt Reynolds of his generation. But back to Cowboys and Aliens, apparently there were all sorts of different writers brought in, and worries about different approaches and stuff. And at some point I'd like to see the longer cut that's on DVD and pay-per-view, and see if there's any real improvement. But it's sort of like you could tell that they were trying for the monster and cowboy fusion, and in a way you kind of wish with Daniel Craig and Harrison Ford they had just done a remake of like Ray Harryhausen's old Valley of Gwangi instead, where cowboys are just chasing dinosaurs instead of aliens from otherwise. And then we jump in quality from Cowboys and Aliens to David Cronenberg and Christopher Hampton's A Dangerous Method, which at the beginning you get a little bit of Keira Knightley, really giving her performance both knees, as sort of like, take that, Natalie Portman, kind of like, I liked being beaten, that, just overacting with relish, and then she kind of reins it in as the film goes along. But in essence, it's sort of like a, just sort of like Freud and Jung, and sort of like, workplace rivalry, except they're psychiatric, and one bests the other. And as Cronenberg wanting to be taken seriously concerned, it's an okay film. It's not the horribly parched experience that M. Butterfly was, but he can do better. So that's why this film to me was an underachiever. And then we go quickly to the Adjustment Bureau, which is, I guess, the filmmaker was like a part of the Soderbergh and Clooney entourage, and anyway, you know, different, just sort of like a long Twilight Zone episode with Matt Damon and the not really a bride in Hollywood, but always a bridesmaid, Emily Blunt, and saw this on DVD, and that's about the right price for it. It's just sort of well-intentioned, but not as profound or not as brilliantly, you know, one dimension into another. Don't upset the time-space continuum type of film as it wanted to be. Beginners. Directed by Mike Mills, not the Mike Mills of the now defunct REM, but the Mike Mills married to Miranda July, and very, very cutesy, twee, great Christopher Plummer performance as the dying father, and otherwise it just sort of seemed like that Mike Mills was trying to come up with a kind of cutesy twee film that would make Francois Truffaut look like John Milius, I guess, by comparison. And I felt very sorry for Melanie Laurent. Here she is. She did that really good performance for Tarantino in *Inglourious Bastards*, and what does she get asked to do for a film made in America? The kooky French gamin. There, yeah, that's a nice retrograde step backward kind of role. Next, the third of the Daniel Craig films on this list, Dreamhouse, and obviously Jim Sheridan has dabbled with commercial filmmaking before. The Terrence Winter written Get Rich or Die Trying for 50 Cent being an example, but with Dreamhouse, it's like Jim Sheridan made a devil's bargain to work for Jim Robinson's Morgan Creek Company, and Morgan Creek's idea of good movies, you know, when they were really riding high in the industry, were things like the Major League franchise, the Young Guns duology, and what I like to call Kevin Hood, Kevin Costner as Robin Hood, with the sort of Middle Ages Malibu British accent. And Dreamhouse, I guess, wasn't conventional enough or broad enough for Mr. Robinson and Morgan Creek, so it went through a lot of reshooting, and it's like about a competent first almost hour, and then a what the heck is this last half hour of patched together mess. So, and then, well, patched together mess number 9, Green Lantern, which I guess had massive interference from the DC Comics people and maybe Warner Brothers as well, but it's sort of like kind of a shock that, you know, WB can let Christopher Nolan do really classy Batman movies, but they hire like Martin Campbell, who, you know, did two good James Bond films, and you know, you've you know, well, I mean, I could talk a lot about you know, Ryan Reynolds being Butch, and Blake Lively, you know, trying too hard to, you know, be like campy Ernest and stuff, but that's, you know, let's draw the curtain at charity, as Mark Twain said. And then the last film is the highly acclaimed by several, and moving and brilliant to them, the Terrence Malick's The Tree of Life, which has, to be honest, brilliant individual scenes, but as with The Thin Red Line, it's a effective shorter film trapped inside a longer film, and perhaps a good 100-minute assembly could be made of the alleged 8-hour version that Malick's been touting, and I think his DP, Emmanuel Lubezki, as well. And I don't know, but it's like, I'm aware that the thread going through all of Malick's work is the grandeur of the land and nature, and the pettiness and ultimate insignificance of man's conflicts with each other. It's just, you know, it's probably, in my ideal version of The Tree of Life, just a bit less of the creation story, and more of the human story, and you know, cut out the god awful student film, all the people living and dead on the beach, which is something that I would think, like, you know, if he were still alive, and I'm thinking he's not alive now, but the late Tony Villani, that taught at the American Film Institute, if he were to see the ending of Malick's A Tree of Life, he probably, you know, probably would have thought it, you know, worse than the worst first year student video project done by AFI student fellows. So that's all. I'm glad to have gotten to share the cinematic underachievers of 2011, and I really appreciate your watching and listening. Thanks very much.